welcome to Record-ology. Hey everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. I'm hoping that you are safe, healthy, happy, all those good things, wherever you are and whenever you're watching this. So today's video is a special request from a new viewer who said, tell me about 12-inch 78s. And we've talked about 12-inch 78s in the past. I don't know if we've done a dedicated video or not. I'm starting to lose track of some of the older videos. So I thought it was time for a discussion around this very interesting format. So to begin with, I have in front of you a 10-inch 78, which is more common in terms of size. 78s come in all shapes and sizes. In fact, I have some miniature ones that we're going to be looking at in the near future as well. But most of the time, they're either 10-inch or 12-inch. Now, you'll turn up 12-inch 78s even at Goodwill from time to time. So they are out there. And I've got several examples here to look at, but I wanted to start with the 10-inch 78. This one is interesting. This is what I would normally refer to as a pâté record. However, I've been told it is pâté. So I wonder how long I've been saying that wrong. This one was, as you can see, for U.S. consumption only. A pretty interesting record. I don't think we've ever featured this, but I pulled this out just so we would have something to compare it to size-wise. But here is a 12-inch 78. And as you can imagine, it is the same size as a 12-inch LP vinyl record. However, this is going to be a shellac record, like a standard 78. This, by the way, has got to be my favorite record sleeve of all time. If you ever watch those videos from like the 30s where they're predicting what the future is going to be like, and there's this one from 1939 where they've got a talking robot, which is phenomenal technology to think of. 1939, a talking robot. This is stuff you would see like at the World's Fair. You know what I mean? This kind of stuff. This reminds me of that. This art, the whole thing, this magic brain. It's phenomenal. It's like a automatic record changing system. And this is just amazing technology, but a great piece of art. I love the fact that record sleeves, vintage ones for 78s, have so much advertising. Now, on a modern vinyl record, the sleeve is often advertising other, vinyl record releases, the content. Whereas I found that a lot of the vintage 78 RPM sleeves are talking about the technology. And this one is talking about genuine RCA Victrola, made for each other. The Victor Records and the RCA Victrola with some great, logos here. And this, has had a rough time. It's been taped up a little bit. Let's look on the flip side here. Victor Records, the world's greatest artists are on Victor Records. So let's start with the basics as I pull this out here. Why are some records 78s? By the way, before World War II, they were just called records. There was nothing to delineate them from, a non-78 record. I mean, a cylinder record perhaps, but for the most part, these were just records until we had a different kind of format. Just for comparison's sake, here's that 10-inch record. So you can see comparison-wise the difference between our standard 78 and a 12-inch 78. So what is the purpose of having a larger 12-inch 78 shellac record? And yes, it is heavy, by the way, as you can imagine. It's like carrying around a piece of glass. Very brittle. Got in trouble in an early video for saying 78s don't warp. But I have owned and I've handled a lot of 78s, and I just haven't found any that have warped yet. Now, I accept the fact that 78s warp. Now, I get that. It's one of the earliest lessons I've learned from you guys. But it's rigid. These are typically very rigid, whereas you get an LP record out, it's flopping around and whatnot. But the main reason why they did this was to facilitate longer playback. A 10-inch 78 is going to have 3 minutes, give or take, of playback time. And the reason why I say give or take is the width of the grooves, the dimension, or groove. It's only one concentric groove. The width of the groove and how it's modulated is something that is controlled in the mastering process. The engineer has control over that. So there is a finite amount of play in terms of how much music, depending on the volume, the type of music, if it's mono or stereo for an LP record, things of that nature. But typically, a 10-inch record is going to render 3 minutes of music, whereas on a 12-inch record of this nature, you're going to be able to get more like 4 to 7 minutes, maybe even 8 minutes of music. So that's going to lend itself to classical music, which is why a lot of 12-inch 78s are going to have classical music. This one is Over the Waves Waltz. Now on the flip side of this, you will see that this says Danube Waves Waltz. We featured this once, played it on the Vina Nola, and I had mistakenly said that this was the Danube. I misquoted this song. Danube threw me off. There's different Danubes. This thing is dusty. I just happen to have a slightly damp cloth off camera. So let's go ahead and give it the treatment here it deserves. As you can tell, this one has a typical smaller label that you would find on a 78. It kind of makes this part, it kind of sets the... Okay, let's look at a LP. I keep talking about it, but let's actually pull one up side by side so you can see what I'm talking about. You get to the point where you can realize by looking at it if it's a 78 12-inch record or an LP. Because look at this. Look at the size of the label on this record compared to this. Yet the overall dimension is the same. 12 inches. This one obviously 78 RPM. This one 33 1/3 RPM. And it's not exactly 78 RPM. And a lot of the early 78s weren't precise. They ranged from anywhere from 77 and change to over 80 RPM. So it was a loose standard. Some records, some labels, some titles during certain eras had different speeds. So 78's an approximation, and even 78, it's not dead on 70. It's like 78 and it's like 78.2 or something. It's not exactly 78. Regardless, that's kind of the comparison. And the basic fact is you can fit more music on a bigger record. That's what it comes down to. You can fit more music on a bigger record. Just like the smaller cousin, the 10-inch 78, these have the wide groove, so you get the best performance by playing it with a wide groove stylus, not a micro groove stylus. We're going to listen to one a little bit here in a minute, but I wanted to show you that. And let's go ahead and progress through the stack here. Awesome. I should probably put it in that sleeve now that we're done looking at it. Here's an interesting one, more of a plain Jane RCA Victor label, but still good. This one is an interesting one because you'll see it says Red Seal Records. So Red Seal was indicative of the classical music division of RCA Victor. So again, another classical music piece here. And yes, this stuff will trigger copyright content matches, which is bizarre, but it's true. So this theme of, Red Seal and eventually other colors as well would eventually make its way into 45s, like we've looked at this little booklet before. Remember the colored records? Well, look which one red is. Classical. And that's a holdover from the old Red Seal that predates it. So pretty cool stuff. And again, you'll find these out there. You'll find them. They can be found. They're not super common, but they're not... I wouldn't go so far as to say they're rare, and usually the prices are still $1 or $2 or $3. I really wouldn't pay much more than that. So that's another example right there. And then finally, I wanted to show you these. Now, when you have and we've listened to a couple of these in the past too, but when you have more playtime, how are you going to make the most of it? So, spoken word. So this is literally essentially like a book on record. This is a story of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. And it is told on this collection of 78 RPM records. This one actually, I think that's an early vinyl, possibly a vinylite. Good grief, this thing needs to be cleaned. So 78 RPM, not necessarily shellac, but most of them are shellac. It's amazing how much dust it can collect sitting in this in a closed case, but I digress. Still dust on there. Good grief. This light, I tell you, this light brings dust out of the woodwork, so to speak. So anyway, yeah, this is interesting. Again, you can hear almost, you know what? That sounds like almost like polystyrene, kind of a ring to it. Interesting. Okay, so there's some examples of some 12-inch 78s. And we're going to listen to the Red Seal record. So right now, this is a great way to do that with the Audiotronics. I've got the 78 stylus on there. so we can hear it in all of its glory. Make sure we're on 78 RPM up here. Yeah. Somebody mentioned, please put that knob on there. I know. I need to do it. I want to do it as well. Seeing a heavy 78 RPM record flying around. It's a 12-inch 78 record looks more hazardous and out of control than a 10-inch, obviously, because that outer edge is spinning fast. But let's go ahead and give it a listen. And again, I got to be selective because, yes, we'll get a content ID strike. It's amazing but true. It was amazing when I was doing that show the other day on the Disney Snow White stuff. Good grief. I couldn't use more than 2 seconds of audio before Disney was pulling up the content ID on that. So again, 4 to 8 minutes of music on these versus 3 minutes on the smaller ones. Wow, that really stopped abruptly there. So it's an interesting concept and something that's kind of fun to collect. I remember when I first found these, I was like, holy cow. I've been literally discovering and learning about records. Most of my knowledge has been gained by doing this show. So having never seen one before, I came across one. I was like, this must be super rare. You know, a 12-inch 78. How bizarre. But it's actually good that they're not super rare. That means anybody can find one. And that's all I can play, unfortunately. I wish I could play more. I've had this idea. Tell me what you guys think of this idea. What would you think if I were to, in situations like this when I would like to play a record but I can't, what if I were to embed a video link where the full record is playing to give you guys an opportunity to hear the music? And you have to watch the main video to get the link to the secondary video. Would that be... I think that'd be a fair compromise because that way you would be able to, you know, learn the history. And then if you wanted to go and watch the full record play, we could do that as a separate video. So I think that would make sense. But anyway, that's going to do it for now, guys. I hope you learned a thing or two. I know I do every moment of every day. Like I didn't realize those were styrene or vinylite records in that one set there. I thought they were shellac. They are not. But here's another look at the Red Seal record on this 12-inch 78 RPM record. Let me know down in the comments below if you've come across any of these, what your thoughts are, any details I've missed, or any tips or hints you can give to the audience. But that's going to do it for now, guys. Happy record hunting. We will see you tomorrow.